Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with the Weekly Comic Book Roundup. We've gone over this week's Marvel books as well as a single entry from Boom Studios. Now it's on to this week's DC titles. Kicking things off with One Star Squadron number 6, final issue of the miniseries. Where we left off, Red Tornado had given the money that the former owners of Heroes for You had given him to Minuteman, so that Minuteman could run, as he had been the one who set the building on fire and inadvertently caused the death of Gangbuster. So the issue begins 15 months later. Red Tornado's living, doing his best. On Valentine's Day, he gets some flowers for his wife as well as for Gangbuster, and he also gets a whole bunch of chili. Reminisces about when he helped get Gangbuster settled into his brief home. You also see the funeral. Apparently, there was an ice storm recently in Metropolis, and Red Tornado basically restart the power grid using his wind powers to unfreeze the turbines. There's a news report that apparently Minuteman is dead. Red Tornado goes to identify the body and says it's him. Only it's not. Red then goes to talk to G.I. Robot. Telling him that he lied to the coroner, as well as, helped Gangbuster get away, but... And G.I. Robot has some thoughts, mainly that, the fact that heroes exist shows that, human institutions can't be trusted. He goes to talk to Heckler, but Heckler is in the midst of an interview with Lex Luthor. Then he goes to talk to Power Girl, who apologizes for getting so wrapped up in things. And then that afternoon, when he arrives home, apparently there's a letter for him from Minuteman, explaining that he tried to overdose, and he tried to off himself. Initially trying with a knife, or just thinking that he'd try with a knife, but couldn't do it, so he tried to OD on Miraclo, and passed out and popped the mattress on his waterbed, which is how his attempt was discovered. And so he was airlifted to the hospital, and his former dealer was in fact the pilot. Turns out that the former dealer he's no longer a dealer, and so that inspired Minuteman to try and be better. And so he got out and moved to Montana, where his sister lives, and he's trying to make a life for himself, not as a hero, just as a man. And he sends a Employee of the Year medal to with everything to Red. And Red looks at the picture of the team of the employees and heads back inside. And that is where the series ends. This was a really good, and to be fair, I kind of feel like it's one of those It was one of those books that was much better than any business being. What kind of came off is probably just being a tongue-in-cheek, let's trot out the D-listers for a minute, and poke fun and put them in funny situations. Turned out to be something much more meaningful. And, yeah, I'm glad that it's not going to turn into an ongoing. It's fine as a mini. So, but anyway, moving on to our next book, we got Task Force Z, number 7. Where we left off, Task Force Z was pretty well screwed. But they at least knew who their enemies were. We begin with Red Hood having a dream of attacking all of the Bat villains. Batgirl and Nightwing call him out on this, but then everyone turns into a zombie, and then he wakes up. And team's as ready as they're going to be. The plan is to send KGBs go potentially basically say where it's possible that the other members of the team of Waller's team would be found. First going after Copperhead. Then Freeze goes after Madame Crow. Bane goes after Grundy. Red Hood goes after Zaz. Meanwhile, Bloom is trying to replicate the resin, but not at a fast enough pace for his new employer. When in trying to recruit Zaz, Red Hood ends up having a fight with him, but he manages to outthink Zaz. Meanwhile, at the chop shop, the twins are trying to get together what resin they can, and when Freeze comes in, and they accidentally tell him that it's enough to bring someone back permanently, but only once. Two-Face then goes to talk to Bloom's new employer, basically making a threat of, yeah, okay, fine. Comes down to it, I'll just park my van full of my monsters made from, a pharmaceutical you're working on, and in your parking garage, and let them loose in your building. However, then he returns to the chop shop and discovers that Freeze took the resin and presumably used it on himself. Used it on himself. And so the plan is pretty much done for, since they can't bring back anyone from the team because they had no resin. But Jason explains that he knows someone that has some resin stashed, but it's not someone who's going to want to give it back to them. It's Batman, and that is where the issue ends. This has been a fun book so far, and yeah, I'm kind of enjoying the idea that nothing seems to be able to go right for Task Force Z. Anyway, moving on to our next book, we've got Batman Killing Time, number 3. Where we left off, Catwoman and the Riddler were waiting on their buyer, and the Penguin had apparently survived his beating at the hands of Riddler. So the issue begins. Catwoman and Riddler have sold a Batmobile. Riddler's been shot. Apparently, someone arrived at by someone known simply as the Help. Shortly after he shows up and shoots Riddler, Batman arrives, and Batman and the Hulk get into a fight. Then flashes back a few hours previously, when the Riddler called, when Joker or Penguin called in the help. Who is quite adept, and yeah. Catwoman gets a new vehicle. Then they also gets rid of the Batmobile. While the fight between the Help and Batman has got to the point of talking, with the Help doing most of the conversing, pointing out everyone that Batman's been trained by, and also explaining his own interactions with Batman's various teachers. There's a flashback then to years previously, a box that Bruce Wayne had been given by Ra's al Ghul, almost throwing it into doesn't say where, but almost throws it into a snowy field. Then flashes back a little bit further. Bruce and Ra's training, and Ra's giving Bruce a gift. Explaining he's giving Bruce a gift. Explaining it's nothing but his most valued possession, something he killed many men to acquire and many more to retain. Something for Bruce to carry with him always, to remind him that though he thinks he can reject everything Ra's is, Bruce is Ra's legacy, and Bruce will always remain Ra's one true heir. As Batman and the Hulk fight, Catwoman and Riddler escape, stealing the Batmobile. And later they're still on a truck. Riddler is bleeding out and worried he's going to die. Or basically, either she's going to have to take him to a hospital, just dump him off, or do something. Shortly after the Hulk defeats Batman, leaving Batman his card, the buyer arrives, and the Hulk tortures him. We then get a tale from Middle Ages. A young woman lay dead, and a box is placed in her coffin before it's closed. Then her brother, who placed the box in her coffin, waits for her to return, eventually simply going face first into the mound of dirt that is her grave and dying. After coming to, Batman finds the Hulk's card, as well as the buyer that the Hulk tortured to death. Catwoman does what she can to get rid of medical attention. The Help returns to the Penguin, and basically he's wanting to do something more with his life, and he wants something different this time. He wants what was stolen. To potentially start anew. Batman steals a motorcycle. Then we get the tale of Ra's al Ghul digging up the field where the young girl was buried centuries before, and digging out the Eye of Christ. What is the Eye of... there's a whole write-up about the eye. Somehow I skipped over. Ah, yes. 1372 is when the young girl was buried. But within the box is the Eye of Christ, taken from his body after his soul is sent into heaven. And the issue ends with Ra's al Ghul finding the Eye of Christ and killing those he hired to find it. While in the present, Catwoman waits for word on. Catwoman holds the Eye of Christ and looks into it while awaiting word on the Riddler. That is where the issue ends. I'm really digging this series. Seriously, I'm. My kind of headcanon with it is that it takes place in definitively the same timeline as Batman Catwoman, in part because it's written by Tom King as well. So, moving on to our next book, though, we've got Batman Beyond Neo Year, number 2. Where we left off, Batman, Terry McGinnis, had to deal with the Sword of Gotham. And a building had exploded during that fight. But Bats is trying to figure out what to do now. Goes low tech, being as off the grid as possible, which means not using the bat suit, as it's one of the most high tech pieces of one of the most high tech outfits ever created. But he's able to gather intel by going low tech, and yeah, so he does use the last of his his Batman resources, though, to track down some jewel thieves who are a trio who refer to themselves as Gestalt. Terry chases them, ends up in Joker Town, and we learn the 4 rules for dealing with the Jokers. 1, they'll prey on your mercy. 2, you'll always be outnumbered, so make every shot count. 3, they're untrained. No matter what schwarbit they spout or weapons they wield. And number 4, which is one he had to learn on his own, beat them to the punchline. But Terry manages to catch up with Gestalt, asks for their help, learns about who they are, and reveals his identity to them. But he's taken that said, Terry's taken the diamonds they stole and drops them over the edge of a building. They land on the street, one of them landing right in front of the Sword of Gotham. That is where the issue ends. This is definitely turning out to be an interesting series. I've always been a fan of Batman Beyond. I said I was unable to catch the show in first run, but I managed to watch a decent chunk of it on DVD about 15 years or so ago. But yeah, anyway, moving on to our next book, we've got Flashpoint Beyond, number 1, actually. Where we left off, Thomas Wayne awoke in the back in Flashpoint Earth, or back on the Flashpoint Earth. So he kidnapped Barry Allen with the intention of turning Barry into the Flash. However, an assassin killed Barry first, before he could pull it off. An assassin who seemed to be employed by Aquaman. Also, Judge Harvey Dent was also killed during the attack, orphaning Dent's son, whom Thomas Wayne is taken into custody. Is taken care of. We learn that the Atlanteans had taken Britain and planned to sink it. No word. It's presumed that the Amazons are dead, but he has issued a threat to the surface world that they will retreat from the oceans immediately, turn over nuclear weapons to Atlantis, recognize Aquaman's total authority, or drown, beginning with Britain. 12 hours to comply, or the oceans turn red. The White House has stated they will not negotiate with global terrorists such as Aquaman. So who's going to stop him from destroying the world? But while having breakfast with Dexter Dent, or while Thomas is having breakfast with Dexter Dent, Oswald Cobblepot shows up. He's been called by the boss, after all, and, well, Thomas needs Oswald to basically babysit. Well, apparently Dexter wants to learn how to shoot a gun, so Cobblepot's like, okay, what kind? But Thomas gets ready to go to Britain. We get more of what's going on. Waller setting up something along the lines of a suicide squad. Oliver Queen is dead. Poison Ivy's shown back up. And Bruce makes his way to Atlantis. Wonder Woman, it turns out, is under guard. The idea is she's supposed to die, as the waters rise up. One of her guards wants to finish her off early, though, because she killed his family, and she bites off one of his tentacles. Batman then pops up, kills the guards, borrows the lasso from Diana, uses it on Aquaman to ask, why it's in the assassin. But apparently Aquaman didn't. Clock chimes. It's been 12 hours before he can touch his trident to the orb of ocean, or the ocean orb. He's run through by Wonder Woman, wielding Aquaman's trident. Back in Gotham, Thomas walks in on Oswald teaching Dexter how to shoot, trying to at least. His aim's not exactly great, so. But Thomas pulls Oswald aside. Apparently, their casino's been blown up, and Thomas realizes it was a trap. It was to get Thomas out of Gotham. Also, the security cameras were disabled before the explosion, so. Back on Earth Zero, the Flash shows up at the Batcave. And Bruce Wayne tells the Flash of his anti-speedster countermeasures that are designed to recognize specific speedsters. They show that Zoom is not responsible for what's going on, or at least not nearby. But Barry's getting help on this from Jay Garrick, so if it comes down to it, Barry will call in the League, Jay will call in the Society. But Bruce's visitor explains that the Flashes will find out what Batman's doing, and while Bruce's visitor might not be able to stop him, the Flashes will. Batman's given the advice that it's not too late to undo what he started, but he says yes, it is, and that is where the issue ends. an interesting, true start to the series. I I haven't read the only thing from Flashpoint I read was the Citizen Cold tie-in miniseries. I've seen the Flashpoint Paradox animated movie, which, as I understand, is actually a fairly accurate adaptation. A few changes here and there, but yeah. And finally, our last book of the week, we've got a holdover fresh a few weeks ago, Refrigerator Full of Heads, number 6. Where we left off, things on Brody Island were had gone a little sideways. But Fields and Behringer are discussing their assignment to Brody Island. Turns out that Fields has proposed to his girlfriend because she's pregnant. Or Behringer has proposed to his girlfriend because she's pregnant, and Fields is, of course, overjoyed for him. On Brody Island, well, Fields is in a much different state of mind and still driving with the decapitated shark head attached to the front end of her car. While June is dealing with her ex-boyfriend, who's utilizing the artifacts. But between the axe, the shark head, they're able to subdue Clausen, and but only for a minute. The belt of the eventually, they're able to get the belt off of him. Yeah, things have gone totally sideways on Brody Island. DOD, the DCIS is there to take care of him, take care of everything, and Fields and June drive off. Though the belt is unaccounted for. Though we discover that the belt was picked up by a deer who's being guided by one of the various heads. And the belt is delivered to the head, and that is where the series ends. This has been a fun... I keep on saying that if Refrigerator Full of Heads, if Basketball Head was a tongue-in-cheek, grittily tongue-in-cheek 80s exploitation horror movie, Refrigerator Full of Heads is its mid to late 80s cash grab sequel, and in the best ways. But anyway, that is going to do it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.